If you're talking about it, I'll be talking about it. Dennis Prager here. Join me this morning at 11, right here on AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, so President Trump in Florida yesterday, still surveying hurricane damage. Took some questions from enterprising reporters and took the opportunity to clarify some of what is swirling around him regarding his newfound relationship with
Chuck and Nancy.
Yeah, Pagliacci and Scared Raccoon Face. The deal on DACA. Oh, we got a deal on DACA, and there's going to be no border wall funding, no border security concessions.
Everyone yesterday, Amnesty Don.
Well,
that was the headline on Breitbart.
This is what President Trump had to say on the topic.
We're not looking at citizenship. We're not looking at amnesty. We're looking at allowing people to stay here. We're working with everybody, Republican. We're working with Democrat. I just spoke with Paul Ryan. He's on board. Everybody's on board. They want to do something. We're not talking about amnesty. We're talking about taking care of people that were brought here, people that have done a good job and were not brought here of their own volition. But very importantly, what we want, we have to have a wall. If the wall is going to be obstructed, when we need the funds at a little bit later date, we'll be determining how much we need. Then we're not doing anything. Right.
But Chuck Schumer, Pagliacci, seems to think he's got Trump over a barrel. He's got him right where he wants him because he was caught by a hot mic by the
C-SPAN 2, the Deuce, or the regular C-SPAN?
The deep state operators over at C-SPAN, the original, I think. Maybe Brian Lamb was kind of following around as a... here's Chuck Schumer talking to an unnamed colleague about his relationship with Trump and his conversation with the president.
Sorry, just got here. Anything new? No. He likes us. He likes me anyway. Look, what we said was exactly accurate. Here's what I told him. I said, Mr. President, you're much better off if you can sometimes step right and sometimes step left. If you have to step just in one direction, you're boxed. He gets that. Oh, it's going to work out, and it'll make us more productive, too.
Oh, isn't that...
It'll make us feel productive, too.
Music to my ears. Pagliacci is looking to be more productive, and he thinks Trump gets the Potomac two-step.
Or is Trump playing him?
What to make of the apparent dance lessons Pagliacci is giving the president? For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Fox News chief national correspondent, author of the new book, 42 Faith, The Rest of the Jackie Robinson Story. He is Ed Henry. Ed, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. There's so much to unpack. I want to unpack there, but I got to start with Amy calling C-SPAN 2 the Deuce.
Yeah.
It's sort of like she's geeking out on politics, which I love.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I call ESPN 2. ESPN 2 is the Deuce, so like C-SPAN 2. Yeah.
Well, C-SPAN 2 is the hipper C-SPAN. There's no question about it. It's for the kids.
Yeah, and they let their hair down. They got the hot mic moment, and they tell you what they're really thinking.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so what about Pagliacci and the dance lessons he's recounting?
Look, so I imagine, I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C., and I imagine from where you're sitting and a lot of your listeners, maybe outside the Beltway, are sort of like, yep, this is the Potomac two-step. Donald Trump ran as one thing. Now he's going to play with Chuck Nancy, and maybe he's not going to build the wall. I got another view of it, which is that tell me exactly how many campaign promises he was getting done when he was just doing maybe the one step with Paul and Mitch. Okay, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell have done virtually nothing for this president. And so I actually, when I get outside the Beltway, and I was happy to see Dan a couple months back when I was doing the book signing, I have a lot of people who come up to me who are Fox viewers and say, so, we had a Republican House, and we couldn't repeal and replace Obamacare. So I kept hearing Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan say, you got to give us a Republican Senate, then we could do it. We gave him a Republican Senate. A guy told me this literally last weekend, and he said, so we gave him a Republican Senate. And then they tried again, and they kept failing. And they said, no, there's one more thing. You got to give us a Republican president. Then we'll get it done. And guess what? They delivered on a Republican president, and Mitch and Paul still can't get it done.
Well, although to be fair, the House did pass a replace. The House did pass an Obamacare replace.
Yeah, but it didn't become a law.
I understand.
The leaders kept telling us, well, we'll get this done if we have a president who will sign into the law. You got a president who's waving a pen in the Oval Office that, so here's the big picture, I think. I think people who supported Donald Trump can and have a right to be frustrated that it doesn't look like he's going to get the wall in this deal on the Dreamers. But I think he's reflecting the reality of he has to get some momentum going on some of this, on some budget deals. He's got to clear the Dreamer issue out. Otherwise, Republicans are going to be painted by Chuck and Nancy, as you call them, as being uncaring, unfeeling. He can't on principles. He's got to stand up and say, look, these folks came in illegally. But I think there also has to be some balance on the fact that not all, but many of the young people who came in with their parents illegally are serving our military, are going to college, are doing the right thing, quote unquote. That doesn't mean we give them amnesty. That does not mean that we say, hey, here you go, you're a citizen. I think they've got to get on some sort of a path, and the president is going to have to be tough in the latter stages of these negotiations to make sure it is not amnesty, because that would be ridiculous if he caved on that. However, I got to go back to the fact that McConnell and Ryan were not getting anything done for this president.
Let me also. I'm sorry. Let me also suggest this, though. I'd get your reaction. Is that Trump? All the scholarship on Trump in terms of how he's different in one-on-one or small group meetings as opposed to when he's on the stump or when he's on his reality TV show. Much more charming, much more of a people pleaser. He's not combative. And so he has a good meeting with Chuck and Nancy, and they think that a new day has dawned. And that's just Trump being Trump interpersonally. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything, because they took something very different away from that meeting than he said in Florida yesterday.
Yeah, I think that the critics should calm down, as I was saying a moment ago on immigration, that just because he does some deals with Chuck and Nancy doesn't mean he's going to drop all of his principles. But by the same token, I think the president has to check his optimism in some of those comments, as do the Democrats. That I don't think this is a brand new day where all of a sudden the skies are going to part and they're going to just magically figure everything out. I mean, there's a lot of tough choices ahead on these big issues. But I guess my point is, after 7-8 months of Republican rule, you had issue after issue just sort of piled up. Obamacare is just one of many. By the way, we haven't even had a chance to talk about maybe the biggest Republican priority of all, when you have the House, the Senate, and the White House, which is finally getting real tax reform. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're moving on it, but they're moving like turtles right now here in the Beltway. I mean, they're not moving quickly. And again, the year is almost over, the first year in office for this president. And he doesn't have tax reform. He doesn't have infrastructure, by the way, which I bet a lot of your listeners in Chicago care about. I mean, I was listening to the traffic report before, and it was going to be over an hour from O'Hare to downtown. That's probably volume, but there's also construction every other day. There are bridges that need to be dealt with. You go to LaGuardia Airport in New York, and it's a mess. And so, how is it that a Republican president who's a builder and talked in the campaign about infrastructure spending, which Democrats say they support, and would create a heck of a lot of jobs, by the way, and the tax cuts would put a lot of money in the pocket of your listeners, where's the tax cut the president talked about? So I'm not blaming him for the inaction. I'm just saying I don't blame him for saying I'm going to try something different. I tried to just wait for Speaker Ryan and Senator McConnell to get this stuff done. And the president is saying, and in fact, in later comments on Air Force One, you played some of that audio, he said, I tried it one way. Now I'm going to basically try it another way.
Yep. But do you think Trump loyalists are okay with that? Because I haven't seen a lot of pushback. I mean, of course, you have conservative lawmakers, Steve King, saying, the DACA deal, the base will leave him. But his actual constituents, I mean, I haven't heard a lot of pushback.
I don't think they will.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you go back to something the president said a long time ago. I think he said it as a candidate that, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and my supporters will still support me. That might have been a bit extreme and a little out there. But his supporters are very loyal. And so I see on social media this morning some people burning their Make America Great Again hats. I don't know if this is a real thing or if people are making it up to make it look like there's trouble in the base. You always have to be careful if this is some goofy social media thing.
Yeah, right.
But at the end of the day, I think most of his supporters are going to stay with him. I think that, it might – here's the other thing, is when I heard the president in the clip you played, I was waiting to come on. And he was saying, look, the Democrats are going to work with me on some things. I'm going to work with them on some things. I was thinking, look, it's not perfect, but this is what a lot of voters say they want to actually see.
Right.
I mean, they don't just want one party ramming things down the other's throat. We saw that under President Obama. How'd that go? All he ended up doing, beyond Obamacare and some other stuff was executive action, and then Trump comes into office and he starts removing them. So if you're a Republican who voted for Donald Trump, or an independent who voted for Donald Trump, or a Democrat across the aisle, do you think it really makes sense for this president to go alone and do everything you want him to do, but maybe without Congress, and do it as an executive action? And then Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or someone else is elected in 4 or 8 years, and they basically undo everything you want. It doesn't make any sense. At some point, you've got to move at least somewhat to the middle and get some stuff done that moves the country forward, regardless of party.
The big stories of the last 2 weeks, of course, the devastating weather in the Houston area and in Florida. Do you sense that the D.C. press corps is unpleasantly surprised by what seems to be the very competent administration of the government in response to these crises in Houston and Florida?
Initial hours before the first Hurricane Harvey hit, my colleague Howie Kurtz was saying, boy, the mainstream media is already jumping on this. I said, what do you mean? He said, I've heard a couple of reports on some other networks saying this is a big test for President Trump, when it may be or it may not be, because in a lot of these cases with storms, it's the governor, it's the mayors, it's FEMA, which, yes, is part of the administration, but is a kind of a non-political agency that's supposed to just fix these things. And that narrative is, my point is, that narrative was out there before the storms hit, and then you're absolutely right, Dan. The response has been almost pitch perfect. I think any reasonable person would say. And you never hear the media say, hey, President Trump actually did a pretty good job.
I know.
They just sort of moved on from it.
And they pretty much buried that he donated $1 million to Hurricane Harvey victims.
I think this might be an example of why people were excited about electing a businessman for president for the first time. On the deal side, the negotiating side with Congress, up until recently, as we've been talking, it hadn't really worked that well. It is sort of a businessman, fish out of water, still trying to figure out Washington. In the case of the storm management, I think we've seen exactly why people want to elect a businessman. I haven't heard enough of that in the media. Here's a CEO saying, this is what we're going to do. Here's the big picture. Everybody be confident. Here's what I'm going to tweet out. Here's the meeting. Here's the briefing. And then he delegates to Vice President Pence, who's been on it. He's working with the governors, Rick Scott in Florida. Frankly, I think he's acted like a CEO and has done a darn good job, and the media doesn't want to give him credit.
He is Ed Henry, chief national correspondent for Fox News, author of the new book on Jackie Robinson, 42 Faith, the rest of the Jackie Robinson story. Ed, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen.